Next, please join me in welcoming the Honorable John Phelan, Secretary of the Navy, and the Honorable Mike Gallagher, Head of Defense at Palantir, for a conversation on delivering maritime dominance.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be back here at SCSP. It's great to see an incredible turnout, an incredible collection of innovative companies, and what an honor it is to be able to introduce the 79th Secretary of the Navy, John Phelan. Anyone who knows the Secretary knows he's had a remarkable career in the private sector, but what might be just as impressive as his business record is the torrent pace he's been working at as Secretary of the Navy. Our 79th Secretary of the Navy hasn't even been Secretary for 70 days yet. He has traveled coast to coast. He's visited 8 public and private shipyards, and he's just returned from a trip to the Indo-Pacific. And what struck me throughout these trips is that he's consistently echoed a dominant message, which is that the days of risk aversion and hesitation are behind us, and that change is coming to the United States Navy. In Silicon Valley speak, we might call this going full founders mode on the United States Navy, and it couldn't come at a more important time. As the Secretary has pointed out, just last year, China produced more ships in a single year than we have since World War II, and it's become clear that the American industrial base that won World War II is not equipped at present to deter or win the next one. So how lucky are we to have an actual industrialist, a businessman, leading our Navy in this critical time, helping to maintain a decisive naval force and prevent World War III. So please, with that in mind, it's an honor to welcome the Secretary of the Navy, John Phelan. We will jump right into question and answer. So first of all, I think, Mr. Secretary, it is rare that we get someone with your business background in this position. Talk to me a little bit about why the President chose you for this position, the conversations leading up to you being in this role.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always good to be around people who are trying to help the Navy get better, move faster, because that is really a key goal. I think, look, at the end of the day, the President, I don't fit the normal profile for a Secretary of the Navy, and I think that's precisely why the President chose me. I like complicated tasks. The Navy's complicated. I know how to scale things. I come from a performance-oriented culture. And so I think that in my discussions with the President coming up to nomination, we really talked about kind of the 3 goals that we were looking to achieve, or that I would look to achieve as Secretary of the Navy, and I think it aligned up well with his goals, which was, basically, as he calls it, shipbuilding, and the maritime industrial base, and trying to fix that. I think he felt like having someone with private sector experience to help try to bring that about would be beneficial.
Fantastic. So you made your way through the Senate confirmation gauntlet. You're in the position. How are you now applying that business mindset to the Department of the Navy?
So I'd say a couple things. So first, right now, I'm kind of on what I call my learning and listening tour. So I'm meeting with people from the deck plate all the way up to the flags and executive officers and captains, trying to understand what are the issues they're facing, what is it we're doing, what are our processes, what do we do, how do we do it, as simply as how do we build a ship. So before we even construct a ship, we have 3 different stages that take anywhere from 1 to 3 years. I don't understand that, to be perfectly honest. We need to move much faster. And so understanding our processes, why you're trying to study the culture of the Navy and figure out how, if I really want to bring about change, I think how do we adapt these cultures, the culture of moving fast, being more agile, and so I have to first understand how we work today and how to change that. So that's really where my focus has been at this stage, and then I'm hoping at some point very soon to kind of come out with our plans and how to go about that. But we're slowly implementing these things now. There are different things that we're doing in terms of trying to speed things up. So I had an issue. I saw barracks in Guam that was beyond deplorable, and I had just visited a brand new barracks that had been built and was told that it was going to be ready for them to move in like 2 months. And I'm like, what else needs to be done? Why can't they move into this now? And, I said, okay, I'll just make it very clear. If they are not out of those barracks in 10 days, someone else is going to be living in them, and you're not going to like who it's going to be. And they're now out. They're in a brand new barracks because I don't understand all the bureaucracy. I do, and I think I know why it exists, but that's what we have to root out, basically.
So one thing I imagine is a big change from your previous life is you now have access to all classified information. You're getting the briefs. By the way, for the protesters to protest me, I'm not the one who controls all the nuclear submarines. The secretary is. But you've now gone around the world. You talked to our allies. So as Secretary of the Navy, what threats are you most concerned about? What keeps you up at night?
So look, my North Star is readiness, and that's what I focus on. So everything that we do and that we look at, I always ask, does this improve readiness? Is it better? Is it neutral? Or is it detract? And if it detracts, we're not going to do it. I also worry about our ability to pivot and change quickly. The Navy and Marine Corps are in very good shape. They are the premier fighting force. But unfortunately, our adversaries are closing, and they're closing at an accelerating rate, and a concerning accelerating rate. So for us to continue to keep that gap, we are going to need to become more adaptable, quicker, and I'd much prefer not to have a conflict to force us into that mode.
So you recently returned, as I mentioned, from a trip to Japan and South Korea. What did you learn while you were there, particularly in terms of some capabilities our allies might bring to that deterrence effort?
Yeah, so I was very impressed by the shipyards both in Korea and Japan. Interestingly, in Japan, they get done in 1 8-hour shift, what we get done in 2.5 shifts. And it's not because their workers are so much better, they're more experienced. So it's really a lifelong thing. The average age of the worker in Japan was 50, I believe, multi-generation. But the other interesting thing I found was in Japan, none of the pipe fitters, welders, handlers, they have zero paperwork. And when I've gone around our public shipyards and our other shipyards, I was just at one on Friday. Basically, our welders, pipe fitters, spend between 30 and 50% of their time doing paperwork. So that's crazy to me. I saw in Korea really, really great robotics. Hanwha's done some very interesting, and Hyundai. And I saw a Palantir system that Hyundai's adopted, both for maintenance and now new building out digital twins that really help their efficacy, and these are things we need to adapt. So they've adopted much faster than we are, and I think we need to learn from our allies and start to adopt that. And
just this weekend at the Shangri-La Dialogue, Secretary Hegseth sort of reiterated the message of we want to leverage our ally capability to help with ship repair and things like that. So presumably that's an opportunity we see in the short term.
Yeah, absolutely. I think ship repair and modernization, and I think honestly, we have to, all options have got to be on the table. I toured a Korean DDG that is about 10% bigger than ours. I actually thought the Combat Information Center was better laid out, to be honest, and they can build that ship in 3 years at a third of the cost. Now, I think that we have plenty of work. We're going to continue to have plenty of work for workers, but we need to get holes in the water, and we need to do it very quickly. So I would say all options need to be on the table, because I think one of the things I've coming onto this job, and you asked me earlier about what are some of the things I've seen with our adversaries. The world is much more dangerous than people realize, and I think that we need to respond to that and act accordingly. And we really need to get our shipbuilding up to snuff, which is not something that's going to happen like that. It'll take some time. But in the meantime, we'll have to, I kind of bucket it in short-term and long-term solutions. In the short run, there's some things we need to do and really have all options. In the long run, build out our base, build out the manufacturing. And I think, look, Hanwha's bought a yard in Philly. They are really bringing real resources to bear and looking to really invest and send expertise over, which I think will be really helpful.
Yes, sir. You talked a little bit about lessons we might be able to learn from allies. We are, of course, at an artificial intelligence conference. How, in general, can the Department of the Navy use AI and some emerging technologies that you've seen to accelerate shipbuilding, to get more hulls in the water on a short period of time?
So look, I think it's both design, I think it's repairs, I think it's even in our scheduling, using more predictive analytics with AI. Obviously you've seen in some of the more recent conflicts the use of AI in very innovative ways that we in the Navy need to adapt as well. And so I think that those are ways artificial intelligence can be used today. I think it's still evolving in design and construction, but I feel pretty strong that it's a great tool to make you more efficient. I use it quite a bit. I used it in my old job significantly, and it was very, very helpful. And I think we just need to start figuring out how to train it and use it properly. And I think in both design, in maintenance scheduling, in parts procurement, inventory, munitions, there's a number of ways I think we can adapt it.
Sure. What role do you see for public-private partnerships in accelerating innovation, whether it's in AI or other areas within the Department of the Navy?
Look, I think the only way to maintain our competitive edge is having much more robust public-private partnerships. I think we need to adopt it. We need to become, when I say the Navy's open for business now, we still have very archaic contracting and procedures, and we need to cut down that bureaucracy and speed it up. But I think that the only way we are going to maintain that edge is with the private sector. So I think one of the things I've come to learn in my first 2 months on the job is we're far too removed from the warfighter. We're far too removed from the customer. We have people in Washington designing things that are not taking into account what the warfighters need and what they're saying and what's going on. And we need to change that. And so I think it's getting people who have mission expertise married up with the private sector's ability to move fast. That should be really good. I just came back from the Naval Postgraduate School, and I saw a number of innovative things that they are doing there, and a lot of them are with industry. So with Anduril, Palantir, Hadrian, a couple different companies, and it was fascinating what they were able to do off commercial shelf at very, very competitive cost. And I think we need to adapt that much faster.
And within the bucket of public-private partnership, does that, in your mind, include private capital? Is there a way to get private capital further into shipbuilding, shipyards, facilitization?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, we have to get more investment in our shipyards. I think we are analyzing the need for potentially additional shipyards to add. And so creating the proper incentives for the private sector in order to do that. And Kelly trying to speed up the regulation of adding these shipyards because, if you look at some of them today, it might take you 5 or 6 years just to get through environmental reviews, et cetera. And we do not have that time. If I were to say one thing I've learned on this job, urgency is something we need to adopt very quickly, and we need to figure out how to move fast, or we could potentially have a problem.
Yeah. Fast, it's like a big aircraft carrier. It doesn't turn on a dime, but so fast it's not always easy to make rapid change. But let's go a layer deeper on that. In what you've learned so far, this is something, let me say, I didn't fully appreciate when I was on the Sea Power Committee in Congress, where I paid lip service to, but until you are trying to do business with the government, you don't realize how hard it can be. So what are some things you think the Navy can do to make it easier for technology and AI companies like all those represented out there at this convention to do business?
Yeah, so one, I think, look, we need to reform our acquisition criteria. we need to adopt that. We need to adopt the attitude that good enough today is better than perfect in 5 years, which is what our current kind of criteria is. And I think that we have to, one of the mottos I like to say is, we have to arm our sailors and Marines with the proper tools for tomorrow's fight. I don't want to give them yesterday's tools for tomorrow's fight. And so the only way we're going to do that is embracing the private sector. So what I would say to the people here today, if you've got an idea that you think can help the readiness and the U.S. Navy, come see me. We're open for business, and we will figure it out, and we will sort through ways to try to speed this up. To your point, I think we need to create more flexibility in Congress. We need to create more flexibility in terms of how we fund things and how we think about funding things. And Kinley, we have to change the risk-taking culture of the Navy. The Navy's very risk-averse, and I think that comes from the nuclear Navy. As the nuclear Navy took over, as we went to nuclear propulsion with submarines and carriers, that risk aversion kind of penetrated everything. And it makes sense when you're dealing with nuclear propulsion, and I understand.
Zero fail.
And that we're not going to play with because we don't want a problem there. But when we're trying different weapon systems, when we're trying different ships, when we're trying to integrate unmanned with manned, we have got to be prepared to fail and take that risk. And it shouldn't be a career killer for you in the Navy. You should be rewarded for taking that sort of risk and trying to make it work. And I think one of the things that we need to get better at is working with the private sector in terms of iterating. Because I think a lot of times what I've seen is we'll try something, it doesn't work, and we're like, we just throw it out. And as you know, in the private sector, you're constantly iterating. Okay, it didn't work. What are the 3 things that didn't work, and let's try to make it better the next time. We need to get better at that.
Yeah, I think ultimately what you may be talking about is not just a change of authorities granted by Congress or a change of incentives for how someone might get promoted, but really bringing a cultural change to the United States Navy, which in some ways is an even harder thing to do, particularly, when Congress will say, okay, we want innovation, we want change, but the minute something goes wrong, Congress will be the first to haul someone up and try and, get their 5 minutes asking hard questions.
Yeah, I think it's a fair thing, but I sense with a strong number of sailors, Marines, admirals, and generals that I meet with, they understand that we need to change, and they see it. Now, there's some who don't want to change, and what I kind of basically, I think the most important part of my job is putting the right person on the right seat on the right platform. And this is where we're going, and if you don't want to go for the ride, then you should potentially retire and call it a day, because that's where we're going, and this is what we're going to do. And that's how the Navy is going to evolve, and the Marine Corps. And I think we have to really push that hard. And to your point, cultural change is very difficult, and I think Congress, can do that. I'm prepared, as I said, to all the flags and the generals. I'll take the arrows for you. You go ahead and test, and you do it. Let them call me up, and I'll take the blame. Because if we don't, I just think the outcome will be much worse if we do not.
So one agent of change has been DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. You've talked positively about how DOGE has been working with the Navy in some previous interviews you've done. Give us a sense of how that DOGE effort has gone so far and how it's helped foster a culture of accountability and innovation within the Department of the Navy.
Yeah, look, so we've embraced the DOGE agents who've come in basically to help us figure out processes and things that we're doing that don't make sense, figuring out contracting things that we're doing that don't make sense, figuring out IT systems that are built on legacy platforms that end up not talking to one another, figuring out systems that we just do because someone in a room has decided let's not change it. So, they've been very effective with us. I think we've saved almost, I think on a gross basis, it's almost $1 billion, and on a net, it's going to probably come out somewhere to 500. And they've only been there for maybe 3 weeks. So canceling redundant IT contracts. We had a number of, and I think the Secretary of Defense talked about this, consulting contracts that did not really make a tremendous amount of sense. I believe, look, my message to consultants who want to come in, great. A large part of your pay is going to be what you save us.
Yeah.
It's not going to be just we pay you and you come in and do this. Show me meaningful savings, and I'll let you make more money.
Yeah.
But it's got to be tied to results. And I think that's one of the things we don't do a good enough job on is tying things to outcomes and results. In our contracts, we don't do a very good job of it. And across shipbuilding, IT, consulting, everything. And so Doge has been very good to work with. I look forward to the next round of working with them to see what they come up with next. And we're trying to remove a number of things that don't make sense that we just seem to do.
And $900 million, $1 billion, I mean, that's a lot of money. You could buy a small ship or a series of autonomous ships with $1 billion.
We could fix a lot of barracks.
That's right. That's right. Buy a lot of munitions as well. Okay, so what should the technologists, the hackers, and innovators who are here, what would be your message to them in terms of encouraging them to work with the Department of Navy? You said it's open for business. Your door is open. If you had an opportunity to talk to that room out there, what would you say?
I would say, look, your skills are very much needed. Come join an organization that's got a mission and purpose of national security and allows you the freedom to do what you do. And I would say, we definitely need that skill set. We need to improve both defensively and offensively when it comes to that arena. And I would say we're a pretty innovative group, and the Navy and Marine Corps does really good work. At the end of the day, I would say we got some pretty cool toys, and you get to test different things. So come give us a try. I think you'll find it's pretty impressive.
Well, recruitment has been a priority for you really since your confirmation hearings. You've talked about it repeatedly. Obviously, a year ago, we were in the full midst of a recruitment crisis. The numbers suggest there has been a Trump bump. It's been ameliorated a little bit, but where are we in terms of recruitment? What have you done to sort of, personally make recruitment a priority, and how do things look on the recruitment front?
So we're doing pretty good, and I think we're at like 106% of what our plan is as of right now, and we feel pretty strong about recruiting. I've reviewed our standards again to make sure that we're not lowering our standards to meet numbers, because that is a game that happens in Washington and happens in the Navy, which is death to an organization. I think lowering standards is a huge mistake. So we're trying to make sure that we're maintaining our standards and evaluating the skills that we really need. Because you get on these ships today, they are far more technologically sophisticated than people realize. The engineering talent you need is much greater. And so we need to make sure we're matching up the skills that we're recruiting with the platforms that we have. So that's really important. I think you'll see, I think to their credit, the Marine Corps does an excellent job of branding their culture, what they look for, what they want. And I'm working on the Navy to kind of create that and establish that and have that brand. And so you'll see some things coming out of us soon. I'm hoping to really, as I mentioned earlier, at the end of my listening and learning tour, to kind of come up with a real plan and put it out in recruiting, and how we're going about that will be one of those major focuses.
Listen, as part of the generation of Marines who rushed out to join after seeing the famous Lava Monster commercial, don't underestimate the impact of throwing down the gauntlet to young Americans and saying, do you have what it takes to meet very high standard? I think that message resonates with a lot of patriotic young Americans.
Yep.
Okay, so obviously the news of the day is the Ukrainian drone attack on Russian bombers, where it seems as if, drones that cost hundreds of dollars took out bombers that cost billions of dollars. Does that in your mind, is that a harbinger of the future of war, the impact of technology on war? Are there, given it's very early, lessons we can start to derive from that, or too early to tell?
Yeah, no, look, I think you can't not study what's happened in Ukraine and candidly what the Navy's been dealing with in the Red Sea. I mean, I don't think people really understand the amount of drone attacks that were going on, and the Navy's done a very good job. We've had some trips, and that's not good, and we need to fix that. But overall, they've done a pretty good job, and the enemy, we're seeing the enemy in real time evolve very quickly, and we've seen the same thing with Ukraine. So we are constantly challenging our teams to look at that and say, how are we going to adapt this? How are we going to use this? What does this mean for us? How do we do it? And so I think the whole issue of manned, unmanned, and how you do it, particularly in a sea environment, which is much more corrosive, much trickier, and how these things coordinate across our force will be critical. And we have to be ready to adapt very, very quickly. And so I think what they pulled off was pretty prolific. And as I like to say, you know, people tend to talk about carriers and are they extinct or whatever. But you know, the one thing I say is it's a moving airfield.
That's right.
It's not that easy to take out a moving airfield. And so the fact that it moves is a pretty good thing. It's not a stationary target.
Fixed bases don't move at 50 nautical miles an hour.
That is correct.
Point taken. Okay, you are the Secretary of the Navy, which is, of course, inclusive of my beloved United States Marine Corps. The Marine Corps has had a very intense debate about the future of the Marine Corps, force design. Tell us a little bit about, you know, your theory on the future of the Marine Corps, what you see as the Marine Corps' role in the Indo-Pacific fight.
Look, the Navy has a critical role. The Marine Corps has a critical role in the Indo-Pacific. I mean, you know, I think people like to call them our 911. They are the ones first to the fray. I think they do some really incredible work and are a very talented force. You know, I was just at Lejeune and saw the MARSOC team, which I think is a pretty exemplary group of warfighters. And I think what I would say, I don't want to. I've been working with the commandant on the Marines and what we're looking for and where we're looking to go, and I think when we come out with our plan, you'll see some things. But I think the direction that they're going is the right direction, and I think they've been very early adopters of technology. They've been very early adopters of drones. I think they've looked at things to become more agile, faster, quick to the fight, and we need to make sure we give them the support they need in order to do that. And I would say stay tuned, but we've got some interesting ideas we're batting about with them that I think brings them into the next level of the fight.
Thanks, sir. We're almost out of time, so I know you have one of the hardest jobs in the universe. You're working 18-hour days, but give us what is the best part of the job so far?
Oh, look, the best part of the job is meeting these young sailors and Marines who are incredibly talented, who got so much admiration for the country and their job and live in pretty tough conditions, and they're just excited, and they love this country. They love what they're doing. You know, I was at the Annapolis graduation, and it was, you know, you shake over 1,000 hands, which is a interesting thing to do. But you could just see the joy and excitement in their face, and it's really a great thing. So that's what keeps me up every morning. That gets me fired up just to meet them and see just the amount of talent that we have, and they're willing to do it. And so it's a really great thing.
Well, Mr. Secretary, on behalf of everyone here and everyone who loves our Navy and Marine Corps team and wants the best for that team, thank you for being with us, and thank you for stepping up to serve in this critical time. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.